news specifically on the war in Iran, because what they're calling Operation Epic Fury and the U.S. war with Iran is now in its 6th day. So far this morning, Iran claims to have targeted Kurdish groups in neighboring Iraq. Tehran state media service says Iran also struck a U.S. oil tanker in the Persian Gulf. Before all of this, Iran also launched another round of missiles and drones into Israel. The IDF said everything was shot down. Meanwhile, exchanges of fire between Israel and Iranian-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon have also picked up. Israel's military continues to issue evacuation orders for civilians living in southern Lebanon as that fighting intensifies. And in Iran, explosions continue to be reported in Tehran and around the country as the United States carries out more strikes in coordination with Israel. The Department of Defense posted this video to social media yesterday showing a torpedo strike on an Iranian frigate yesterday, which sunk the ship. And then, of course, we know there has already been a cost to this war beyond just money, but lives. We're learning more about that fatal drone strike in Kuwait on Sunday that killed American troops. The Department of Defense says 45-year-old Major Jeffrey O'Brien of Iowa was the 5th service member killed in the attack. The Pentagon says 54-year-old Chief Warrant Officer Robert Marzan of California is believed to be, in their words, the 6th casualty caused by that attack. And again, we are praying for their families and keeping them front of mind as we continue to cover this unfolding conflict. I want to bring in author and investigative reporter Nialo Tabrizi with us. Thank you for coming on. Good morning. And I just wonder, as we start, in the 6th day of this conflict, what should we make of what we've seen, the fact that it's continuing on, and just the way that it has so easily spread throughout the region? I mean, we just talked about 3 or 4 various countries there that are now actively seeing missiles and fighting.
Right, absolutely. So, I mean, this is something that I've been tracking for weeks. I put out a story a month ago with the Washington Post looking at the buildup of vessels and aircraft in the Persian Gulf. So this is something that many watchers have been looking at. And I think what we're seeing with Iran, hitting different targets in Dubai, in the Gulf, it's showing that Iran wants to raise the cost of war so that if, there's airstrikes with Israel and the U.S. and Iran, it wants to raise the cost of it, saying that if war is going to come to our country, there's going to be retaliation in the region.
Is it working? Is it changing the calculus? Because I think everyone looks at this conflict and the immediate concerns that I was hearing from both sources on Capitol Hill, but also foreign policy experts, was the fear that this could balloon quite easily in a region that is already a tinderbox. So is raising the cost, if that's actually the calculus on the part of Iran, is it changing anyone else in the way that they're strategizing around it?
Right. It doesn't look like it is because the attacks continue. The airstrikes have been exceptionally heavy in Iran. Even Israeli officials have been quoted saying that just in the first few days of airstrikes in Iran, these targets overall have been heavier than the 12-day war that we saw in the summer. And what we have to really remember is the Islamic Republic is a regime that's built on survival. Just because the head of state was taken out doesn't mean the system is going to fall away. This is a system that's digging its heels in. And as we're seeing, using anything it can to remain in power, whether that means, attacking its allies in the Gulf and continuing to make things unstable at home and repressing its own people, even under airstrikes.
I also think that's where the concern comes in when you hear the president of the United States say, well, people who we might have considered installing or helping get to power in Iran, many of them were killed in these airstrikes. So when you don't have a plan for what comes next, can you talk about what that vacuum looks like, or the ways in which the IRGC are actually just kind of continuing to hold power in the way that you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, that's right. I think, this is what a lot of different analysts in the intelligence community have said, that getting into conflict in Iran would be costly and unpredictable. And we're seeing that play out right now. And it's not as if this is changing the behavior of these Islamic Republic, Iranians that I've been able to connect with in the country just on a few minutes of connectivity when they're able to get it in this blackout. They've said to us that that this was their last option, that they wanted, they want the system to go. They've tried to reform it over time. They've had mixed messaging from the Trump administration, whether or not they were going to help protesters last month and now this. And it puts everybody in a really confusing and dangerous situation.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, we're seeing some of the images of the devastation on the ground there. And I think that's also what some of your reporting has been about lately, specifically in regards to a strike on a school in Iran. I wonder what you've learned through your own reporting, because you had a lot to sift through to even verify where and how this happened. But then also, what kinds of questions it raises, specifically around operational questions about how targets were chosen by the U.S. and Israel.
Right. So I saw this airstrike in the early hours on Saturday in the opening day of this campaign. And, you know, this is something I've been looking at for years. I've been monitoring conflict. And anytime civilian infrastructure is hit, it's really important that we look at it carefully and try to understand what happened. So when I first saw images of this school, the images were horrifying. They were very graphic. You know, I saw images of a small child's hand in the rubble, you know, bloodstained backpacks, really difficult imagery to process. And so I just wanted to make sure that this was a real video. I was able to make sure it was, you know, filmed that day. I was able to also locate it. And something that I saw, and as well as many people saw, was it was adjacent to a Revolutionary Guard Navy base in the town of Minab in southern Hormuzgan province. And this brings up questions as to why was the school hit. We've heard that the U.S. has said that it's investigating the strike, but they haven't taken responsibility yet. And we still don't have enough information to actually understand who did it, whether it was the U.S. or Israel. We know, for example, the U.S. says that it's been taking control of the more southern targets in Iran. It could have very well been an Iranian missile that just dropped, but we don't have that information yet until we get remnants from the scene or until we have images of or really video of the moment of impact. There's still a lot of questions left unanswered, and it's really important that everybody interrogate this, because this was a mass civilian casualty event. Estimations of people, young girls who've been killed, have been anywhere between 150 to 175.
I think it's so important that you're zeroing in on one of so many actions, because we put that map up of where actions are happening in Iran. And there's just so many missiles flying, certainly not just in that country, but throughout the region. And I think it's so important the way that you are focusing in on just one of those to talk about the human cost of this war that I have yet to find, frankly, anyone in Washington who's saying, well, I don't think we should have removed the Shah. I don't agree with that action. I mean, I think in U.S. foreign policy circles, it's the action itself that there's actually some agreement around, but way less agreement around how the administration did it, and certainly a lot of questions about what comes next and how protracted this kind of engagement might be. And so to that end, before I let you go, what are you looking for next? And do we have any sense? I mean, the president has said this could go on for weeks. They're just kind of leaving it open-ended, it seems.
Right. I think the thing that's very difficult with this operation is that it seems that the goals have shifted. You know, on the outset, on the first day, it seemed that the narrative was regime change. You know, President Trump told Iranians, this is your moment, go out onto the streets. Well, how could you go out onto the streets as you're trying to survive many airstrikes? And now, as you said, it's shifted. We could be here for weeks. Is the intention looking at the nuclear sites? We really don't know. And so I'm going to be continuing to track attacks, whether they're directly or indirectly on civilian infrastructure. And I'm going to continue to monitor civilian casualties, because anytime there's a conflict, of course, regular civilians are always the people that pay the price.
Yeah, I think that's a really good reminder as we continue to track this conflict. Author and investigative reporter Nilo Tabrizi, thank you for coming on with us. Appreciate your work.